For 15 years, Sammy Davis Jr. had been the mob's perfect showpiece. The talented black entertainer who performed at their private parties, legitimized their businesses, and made their money look clean. He sang when they told him to sing, smiled when they told him to smile, and kept quiet about what he saw in the shadows. But on August 27, 1966, in a luxury suite at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas, Sammy Davis Jr. said the two words that would destroy his career and nearly cost him his life: "I refuse." What the Chicago outfit had asked him to do that night went beyond entertainment. They wanted him to be the face of legitimacy for an operation so illegal, so morally bankrupt, that even Sammy, who had compromised his principles countless times before, couldn't bring himself to participate. The refusal that followed wasn't just a moment of personal courage. It was a declaration of war against the most powerful criminal organization in America. And the consequences would haunt Sammy for the rest of his life. To understand why Sammy's refusal was so shocking, you have to understand his relationship with organized crime up to that point. For over a decade, Sammy had been what the mob called a useful asset, a famous entertainer who could be counted on to perform services that went far beyond singing and dancing. He had performed at private parties for mob bosses, lending his star power to events that were really business meetings in disguise. He had appeared at casino openings that were money laundering operations. He had posed for photographs with criminals, giving them the legitimacy they craved and couldn't buy. Most importantly, Sammy had kept his mouth shut. He never talked to reporters about what he saw at these events. He never testified to law enforcement about the illegal activities he witnessed. He played the role of the grateful entertainer who was just happy to be included in powerful circles. In return, the mob protected him from racist threats, guaranteed him work in Las Vegas, and made him rich beyond his childhood dreams. It was a devil's bargain, but one that had allowed a poor black kid from Harlem to become one of the most successful entertainers in America. But by 1966, the relationship was becoming more complicated. The Kennedy administration's war on organized crime had intensified federal scrutiny of mob operations. Entertainers who had once been assets were becoming liabilities. The mob needed their celebrity associates to take bigger risks, provide more substantial cover for their operations. And that's where Sammy drew the line. The meeting that changed everything took place on August 27, 1966, in Sam Giancana's private suite at the Desert Inn. Giancana was the head of the Chicago outfit, one of the most powerful men in organized crime, and someone who considered Sammy a personal friend as much as a business asset. Also present were Johnny Rosselli, the mob's Hollywood liaison, and Vincent "the Fish" Cafaro, a capo who specialized in labor racketeering. They had called Sammy to Las Vegas under the pretense of discussing his upcoming performances at mob-controlled venues. But the real purpose of the meeting was much more serious. "Sammy," Giancana began, "we need you to do something special for us, something that goes beyond your usual performances." The request was stunning in its audacity and chilling in its implications. The Chicago outfit was expanding their operations into labor unions, specifically targeting the entertainment workers, unions that controlled stagehands, musicians, and technical crews across the country. They wanted Sammy to be the public face of this expansion, not just performing at union events, but actively campaigning for mob-controlled candidates, lending his celebrity to legitimize what was essentially a hostile takeover of organized labor. "We're talking about controlling every aspect of the entertainment industry," Rosselli explained. "From the guys who move the lights to the musicians in the orchestra. And we need someone the workers trust, someone they see as one of them, to help us sell this." The plan was sophisticated and far-reaching. Sammy would tour the country, appearing at union rallies and endorsing candidates who were secretly controlled by organized crime. His presence would give legitimacy to what were really criminal enterprises disguised as labor organizations. But the most disturbing part of the request came from Cafaro, who explained the long-term vision with chilling casualness. "Once we control the unions, we control who works and who doesn't in this business. We can blacklist anyone who doesn't cooperate. We can shut down productions that don't use our people. We own the entertainment industry completely." Sammy listened to this plan with growing horror. What they were describing wasn't just corruption. It was the systematic takeover of an entire industry through coercion and violence. They wanted him to help them destroy the careers and livelihoods of thousands of workers who would never know they were being betrayed by someone they trusted. "I can't do that," Sammy said quietly. "I won't be part of destroying people's lives." The room went silent. Giancana stared at Sammy as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "Excuse me," Giancana said. "I said I can't do it. I won't do it. Find someone else." Rosselli tried to soften the refusal. "Sammy, maybe you don't understand the full opportunity here. We're talking about making you the most powerful entertainer in America. More powerful than Sinatra, more powerful than anyone." But Sammy was resolute. "I understand exactly what you're talking about. You want me to help you steal from working people. You want me to lie to union members so you can rob them. I won't do it." Cafaro's face turned red with rage. "You ungrateful little—" Giancana held up a hand, stopping Cafaro mid-sentence. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room could hear the threat underneath. "Sammy, I think you need to reconsider. This isn't really a request. This is business. Our business. Your business." But Sammy had finally reached his breaking point. Years of compromises, of looking the other way, of being the smiling face for criminal enterprises, had led to this moment, and he couldn't cross this final line. "Sam, I've done a lot of things for you over the years. I've kept my mouth shut about things I shouldn't have seen. I've performed at parties I shouldn't have attended. I've taken your money and your protection, and I've been grateful for it." He stood up from his chair, his voice gaining strength. "But I won't help you destroy innocent people's lives. I won't be the face of stealing from workers who trust me. And if that means we're done doing business, then we're done." The silence that followed was deafening. No one said no to Sam Giancana. Certainly not someone who owed their career to mob protection and mob venues. Giancana's expression didn't change, but his words carried the weight of a death sentence. "Sammy, you're making a very serious mistake. A very expensive mistake. I hope you can afford the consequences." The consequences began within 48 hours. Sammy was scheduled to open at 3 different Las Vegas venues over the next 2 months. All 3 bookings were mysteriously canceled, with vague explanations about scheduling conflicts and technical difficulties. But the cancellations were just the beginning. Within a week, stories began appearing in gossip columns about Sammy's erratic behavior and unreliability. Unnamed sources claimed he was difficult to work with, that he was making excessive demands, that he was becoming a liability for venues and producers. The stories were planted, of course, part of a coordinated campaign to destroy Sammy's reputation and make him unemployable, but they were subtle enough to seem like legitimate industry criticism rather than obvious retaliation. Then came the more serious attacks. Sammy's recording contracts were suddenly under review. Television appearances were canceled due to quote, creative differences. Movie roles that had been confirmed were mysteriously offered to other actors. The mob's influence in the entertainment industry was vast and invisible. They didn't need to make overt threats. They simply withdrew their protection and let their allies in legitimate businesses know that Sammy Davis Jr. was no longer a favorite asset. The psychological pressure was enormous. Sammy had built his career on being wanted, needed, celebrated. Suddenly, he was finding himself unwelcome in venues where he had been a star just weeks earlier. His management company, which had represented him for years, quietly suggested that perhaps he should take some time off to reassess his career direction. Translation: they were dropping him to avoid their own problems with mob-connected venues. The isolation was almost complete. Frank Sinatra, despite his friendship with Sammy, was facing his own problems with organized crime as the Kennedy administration pressured him to distance himself from mob figures. Dean Martin, ever practical, simply avoided taking sides in what he saw as a business dispute. Only Sammy's immediate family and a few loyal friends stood by him during what became known in entertainment circles as his difficult period, a euphemism that disguised the reality of an organized campaign to destroy his career. The most crushing blow came when Sammy was forced to sell his house in Beverly Hills. Without steady income from performances and with legal bills mounting from contract disputes, he couldn't maintain the lifestyle that had been a symbol of his success. The house sale was covered in the entertainment press as evidence of Sammy's financial problems, but those close to him knew the truth. He wasn't broke because of poor management or excessive spending. He was broke because he had refused to become a criminal. The unofficial blacklist lasted 18 months. 18 months during which one of the most talented entertainers in America was effectively exiled from the industry he had helped to build. The isolation took a terrible toll on Sammy's mental health. Friends reported that he became depressed, paranoid, and increasingly isolated. The man who had thrived on applause and attention was forced to live in silence and obscurity. But Sammy never backed down. Even when offered opportunities to apologize and return to the fold, even when intermediaries suggested that a simple phone call to Sam Giancana could restore his career, Sammy refused to compromise. The blacklist finally began to lift in late 1967, not because the mob forgave Sammy, but because the federal crackdown on organized crime had weakened their control over the entertainment industry. Many of the figures who had orchestrated Sammy's exile were dead, imprisoned, or too busy avoiding law enforcement to maintain their vendetta. Sammy's return to prominence was gradual and never complete. He rebuilt his career through smaller venues, independent productions, and the loyalty of fans who had never stopped believing in his talent. But he was never again the carefree entertainer he had been before 1966. The experience of being abandoned by an industry he had served faithfully, of being punished for refusing to participate in criminal activities, had changed him fundamentally. The refusal that had seemed like such a clear moral choice in that Desert Inn suite had cost Sammy more than money or career opportunities. It had cost him his faith in the entertainment industry, his trust in powerful people, and his belief that talent and hard work were enough to survive in America. When Sam Giancana was murdered in 1975, Sammy did not attend the funeral. When asked for comment by reporters, he simply said, "I'm sorry for his family's loss." No mention of their history, no acknowledgement of their conflict, just the minimum courtesy required by public decency. But those close to Sammy knew that Giancana's death didn't bring him peace. The damage had been done years earlier, when a young entertainer who had compromised his principles countless times finally found a line he couldn't cross. The story of Sammy's refusal and its consequences reveals an uncomfortable truth about the entertainment industry. Success was often conditional on moral flexibility, and those who refused to bend were often broken. Sammy Davis Jr. chose integrity over security, principle over profit, and moral clarity over career advancement. The price he paid was enormous, but the alternative, becoming a willing participant in the systematic exploitation of working people, was unthinkable. In the end, Sammy's greatest performance wasn't on any stage or in any recording studio. It was in that hotel suite in 1966, when he looked the most powerful criminals in America in the eye and said, "I refuse." It was a moment of courage that cost him everything and gave him the only thing that really mattered, the knowledge that when it counted most, he had chosen to be a man rather than a puppet.